Hey, this is Steve from beatseqr.com, and I'm back to show you how to put together a beatseqr 4.0 circuit board from the kit. And I've made quite a few improvements and added some new features, including changing the form factor slightly and adding a new parameter record button. And I've also added a small little area for you to prototype new features if you want to. So let's take a look. Alright, so inside you can see that the kit has a bunch of parts. So I'm just going to separate all these parts out so we can see what's in it. We've got two little baggies full of buttons, and the LCD screen and controller, and the box of resistors and other parts, and some tape. Inside the big bag of resistors and headers, I've got quite a few parts. So there is a small pack of sort of a separated set of resistors, a big strip full of 100 ohm resistors. We've got two potentiometers. We've got 8 faders. And then we've also got quite a few little headers that are going to go on the board. And that's basically what's in the kit. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to start clipping off some of these 100 ohm resistors. What we're going to do is we're going to start placing the 100 ohm resistors in the bottom holes of the step sequence buttons. And then you're going to follow up by placing them in the side holes for the resistors as well. As you can see here, I am putting in the resistors on the side. And we'll go ahead and put more in the holes that correspond to the bottom as well. Start off by doing this for the step sequence buttons. Here you can see that I've got most of the step sequence resistors placed. I'm just going through each button and placing 2 resistors, one for each button. And then bending the leads behind. Okay, so here you can see I've got all my resistors placed for the step sequence buttons, for the parameter change buttons, start and stop, parameter record, and then also the voice select buttons, but only on the side and not the bottom. So don't place any 100 ohm resistors in the bottom. So let's get soldering. So here I've got the board flipped over, and I've gone through and I've soldered quite a few of the resistors. There's still quite a few to do, but just go slow and steady. Just do the resistors first, and eventually you'll get around to doing all of them. Okay, so I've got all my resistors soldered in, so now I'm just going through and clipping the leads so that I have more room to work. And here I am trying to be a smart caveman by trying to do work and hold my phone while I'm taking this video at the same time. So iMovie's trying to do a very good job at reducing the jitter, and it's doing a pretty good job, but you'll have 2 hands to work with, hopefully. Okay, here are the potentiometers. And so there's 2 of these PCB mount style potentiometers, and they go on the board. Here's one of them. It just goes right on the board like that. Should snap in pretty nicely. And here's the second one that goes right next to the first one. Okay, so what I've done here is I've taken the small pack of resistors that have different values, and I've placed them each in the 1K, 2K, 3K, all the way up to the 8K in the voice select button areas, and then I've added a 10K resistor at the top. And then you're going to flip the board over and solder all of these new components down, and clip the leads. Okay, time to make a decision. So we've got 2 baggies of buttons. There's a bag of red and a bag of green. And so you have to decide, do you want to use green buttons for the step sequence buttons and red for everything else, or are you going to do the reverse? So here I'm taking the green buttons out and I'm flipping one over so you can see that the buttons do have an orientation because they've got an LED in them. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you've got the buttons oriented with the thinner and longer middle lead pointed in the direction of, on the circuit board, there is a hole for each button, and one of them is labeled as long. So you're going to want to put the LED tack buttons with the long lead into the long hole, and the rest of the pins will just all snap in pretty nicely. So just make sure you get the orientation correct. That is really, really important. It's not hard to do. Just, pay attention to which side is the long side on the button. Okay, here I've got all of my buttons placed. I used green LED tacks for the step sequence buttons and red buttons for everything else. And except for the start and stop button, which I used a green LED tack for that. And so here I'm flipping over the board and I'm just soldering all of the buttons down. This is going to take a little while, but just keep at it. Alright, so let's put the headers on the board. And these will go on top of the... Wait a minute. These don't go on top of the board. They go on the bottom of the board. So flip the board over. And then place the headers into the places that are shown in the video. Okay, here's all the headers that are placed. I'm going to flip the board over to the top side and solder all the headers into place. And you'll probably do a better job than me because I'm using one hand. Okay, so here I've got some tape protecting the rest of the board while I take a file to file down some of the header pins on this side, as you can see in the video. And what you're going to want to do is file down. You can use either like a rasp or a file or some sandpaper or even a Dremel if you've got one, and protect the circuit board while you file down these pins. You don't have to get them flat, but you do need to take them down a little bit, and I'll explain why in a moment. Okay, so you can see I've taken the file and I've filed these down a little bit, so I'm just going to take the tape off so you can see where I put it on. And the reason why we need to do this is because the faders go on top of these header pins, and these header pins need to let the faders sit flatly on the board. So you don't need to get them flat, but you do need to take the height off of them to some degree. And then before you put the faders down, you're going to need to put 2 layers of tape, electrical tape, on top of these header pins so that they do not come into electrical contact with the faders. So I'm just putting the tape down, and then I'm just going to make sure it's sealed down. And when I'm done here, I'm going to put a second layer of tape over the top of this. Okay, so here are faders, and the models that I have these little extra legs in the middle. And unfortunately, my board is not designed to take advantage of these. So you have to push these little legs down. Push them as flat as you can get them. Doesn't have to be super flat. Don't try to straighten them out. Just push them down as best you can. And then you can start placing them on the board. Okay, so the mounting holes are a little loose, so when you put these down, just be really careful when you angle the board up and solder them down. And because of the headers that we filed down, they do sit a little weird, so you're just going to want to try to push these down as you solder them in. Just try to get them as flat as you can. It's not a big deal. Just try to do the best you can. Okay, this part's really easy. This is the LCD and the controller board. You can get instructions on moderndevice.com. And so what we've got here is 2 resistors that come with that kit. It's either going to be a kit or fully assembled, depending on what's shipping. But basically, you're going to want to find the area on the circuit board that's labeled RBL, and that's the resistor for the backlight on the LCD. So pick the resistor that works, that you like, and solder it in. And then connect the LCD board. And then you're going to take the Arduino Mega and snap it into the headers that we placed in. And then you can fire it up and start testing it out. This is for an older version, but it will work with your version.
Okay, doing some wiring tests. This is the error sign for beatseqr sketch, and all of our LEDs are functioning. This is the fader test sketch. And all of our faders are working correctly. Alright, and this is with the firmware loaded up. And I'm just checking all the buttons. Well, that ain't right. Otherwise, okay, well, let's take a look at this here. My guess is that I accidentally flipped these two resistors. So I can either change this in the firmware, or I can go back and resolder, like unsolder these and reverse them and solder them back in. So, you know, when you have problems, you just gotta fix them. The last couple of things to test are the potentiometers and the screen. And the screen's running. And both of my potentiometers are working. So aside from this one thing, this board is ready to go. Alright, I went down the harder path and changed the resistors, flipped those resistors, and look, it totally works now. Woohoo!